All right, y'all, if y'all will come settle in, we'll get started. Okay, it's time to get started. So I'm gonna ask Mr. Bonner if you push your button so I know where you're at. If you would open us in prayer.
Certainly. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for today. We thank you for all your many blessings. We just pray you would give us wisdom and discernment as we consider these topics, and that we would make the best decision for our state, our constituents, and for you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks, sir. I actually was going to do Senator Burke first because that was going to be pretty quick. But so we've got two bills. We'll hear Kirby's, and then don't anybody leave. We've got a couple of members that are leaving, and fortunately they're present with us. This will be their last meeting, so I wanted to recognize them. But Representative Kirby, if you would go to the table and tell us what you got. All right.
All right, I got a green light. Looks like we're on.
Yep.
All right, House Resolution 1024, LC 365272. If you look at the signers, that's not a misprint with the group of people who have signed off on this. So it is a kind of eclectic group for this committee. But it's pretty simple, and we're not here to talk about indexing or not indexing. It's just a study committee. We did ask the advisory council to look into this, and we still want them to. But we've also asked them to look into Representative Kennard's bill on our EMTs and PTSD. We also asked them to look into Beth Moore's bill that we talked about. We've given them a lot, plus their regular things that they do every year. And so the whole purpose of this is to be done probably in early August with our 5 meetings. There's a lot of data that needs to be collected, a lot of statistics out there, a lot of things to look at, where as a committee, we would have a recommendation that we would get to them to help them out. And I can't sit here today and tell you which way is better. You know, I don't have an opinion on that yet, but after we go through the process, I think we should have a good opinion. So that's all it is a study committee with 5 meetings. If we get it through the House, my goal would have this done by early August at the latest. And I think it's been interesting. There's an awful lot of people who've actually asked to volunteer already it says appointed by the speaker. I don't know why they're talking to me, because last time I checked, I'm not the speaker, but that's all it is. So we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. And I know we've got some people, and whether you signed up or not, we're going to allow everybody that wants to have something to say. So we'll start down there. Is that you, McLean?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. And first, I want to say thank you very much, Representative Kirby, for bringing this, this study committee, because it is definitely something that's really needed. I just, I guess I was going through it a little bit, but I just, the committee members was, I guess, what I was more so concerned about. I know he said this, the speaker, but was it any way else that we could get some of the other entities to make appointments or recommendations?
Well, the typical process since I've been here, you introduce a bill like this, the speaker normally puts you as the chairman of that committee. And even though he'll appoint other people to the committee, we'd certainly want to reach out to the people on this committee and tell you when the meetings are, have you there, have you present, make sure everybody on industry and labor is hearing any data, as well as most of the people behind us, that we want to make sure they're all here and present. When you look at, we can look at 49 other states. I don't think we need to look at all 49, but that's a lot of information out there. I've already been given a lot of information. I said, I am no way any shape or form be able to tell you which way we should go or could go. That's why do a committee, and it's just to help loosen the load a little bit of the advisory council. We've already given them enough to do, and just give them a good solid base to look at when they meet in the fall.
Follow, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make sure that we were all 100% in. Everybody had an opportunity to participate, and no one side was left out.
Absolutely.
Well,
Thank
and the
you.
good news about that, and I'll just jump in there, is generally like I said, the speaker will come to him, or maybe the chair of the committee. We'll have a lot of input as to the makeup, but the good news of that is if you don't make it on the committee, since the committee is open to the public, that everyone who has a desire to speak will be able to. So that's the good news about our study committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else? All right. We did a couple people, Zach Herndon, come on up. Tell us who you are, who you're with. Yes, sir. And you're on.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Zach Hendon, and I'm president of the Workers' Compensation Claimants Lawyers Association, and I'm here to speak in support of HR 1024. I want to thank Vice Chairman Kirby for bringing the resolution to create the study committee. When we're using the term indexing, we're referring to tying the maximum comp rate to a percentage of the statewide average weekly wage. So we're talking about raising the maximum comp rate. When we're talking about that, we're talking about raising the maximum amount the higher wage earners can receive. So think about skilled workers like plumbers and electricians. For most injured workers, the comp rate does not change because it's still tied to the individual, 2/3 of the individual's average weekly wage, which is usually below the max comp rate. We need indexing to keep the max comp rate at least 2/3 of the statewide average weekly wage, and to make it automatic. Georgia last had a raise in the max comp rate in 2019, which is 3 years ago. For decades, the stated goal of the State Board's Advisory Council has been to set the max comp rate at 66 2/3 of the statewide average weekly wage. However, that has not been happening. 6 years ago, we had another period of 3 years where there was no increase before it was finally increased to $100 a week. And some of you may recall that there was a move by somebody to kill that $100 bump, but that was unsuccessful. We've now had another 3 years where we haven't had any increase until this year, and we've got the $50 raise that's part of the bill. Our TTD max is currently $675 a week. A worker maxes out at that comp rate when they're making $1,025 a week. Any worker, like a skilled laborer, making more than $1,025 a week, maxes out and gets a smaller percentage of their wage when they're disabled. Georgia's max comp rate of $675 a week as a percentage of statewide average weekly wage is the lowest in the nation. It is lower than the percentage than Mississippi. There was some information that was, or misinformation that was put out about, well, maybe these numbers are skewed due to the differences in how states tax workers' comp income benefits. But these numbers are not skewed. There is no state that taxes workers' compensation income benefits. Using the most current 12 months of data available, our 675 comp rate is 56.5% of the statewide average weekly wage. With these newer numbers, the statewide average weekly wage is actually $1,191 per week. With the $50 bump in the comp rate this year, our new 725 max comp rate will put that percentage at 60.8% of the statewide average weekly wage. Georgia is one of only 2 states that does not, by statute, annually index their max comp rate in relation to their average weekly wage. The other 48 states have this on cruise control. Indiana is the only other one that doesn't do this. I started to kind of bring 50 poker chips as a visual today, but you'll just have to imagine them. But if you imagine 48 poker chips stacked up, those are the states that index. And if you ranked them from the highest to the lowest, and then there would be 2 chips laying off to the side, that'd be Georgia and Indiana. The 36 of those 48 states index at 100% or higher. That's more than 2/3 of that imaginary stack. 20 of these 36 states index the maximum TTD benefit at 100%. The 100% states include Alabama, Florida, and South Carolina. 16 of those 36 states index at more than 100%, including Tennessee, North Carolina, and Kentucky. If you look at the bottom of the stack, you'll see 4 states. At the bottom 4 states on that stack index at 66 2/3%. Then if you look at the 2 chips laying off to the side, Indiana's legislature each year artificially raises their average weekly wage to exceed 100%. And then that leaves Georgia. Leaves Georgia as an outlier because they don't have indexing and their max comp rate after this year's bump is about 61% of the average weekly wage. Georgia also ranks 46th lowest in the United States in the dollar maximum comp rate payable to injured workers. Trying to keep the max comp rate adjusted to 2/3 of the state average weekly wage is a constant battle every year in the State Board's Advisory Council. And as you can see, this is a battle that the injured workers are losing. Through this study committee, you can gather facts on indexing and make these changes happen automatically each year. Skilled injured workers who are losing their cars, houses, and families need every dollar they can get. Indexing is just math that puts the comp rate on cruise control, and the comp rate can go up or down each year depending on how the economy is doing. Indexing automatically gives you a solution to the problem every year without having to do anything. So with those numbers, I think you would see why it was important that y'all study this issue, and then I would ask you to pass that resolution because we need it looked at very closely. Thank y'all.
Wait, don't go anywhere. You've got a question, Representative Chairman Carpenter.
Thank you
Yes,
very much. So are you on the advisory council?
I'm not.
You're not.
I'm
Okay.
I'm the president of WCC.
I got you. Okay. And then my next question is, to me, and I signed the bill because I think a lot of Representative Kirby, it just almost seems like it's a loaded question, right? I mean, we're talking about doing a study committee, but we already know the answer we're looking for. So it's just, how do we justify getting to the answer we're already looking for? So, I mean, I'm going to support the measure because I support Mr. Kirby, but do you feel like that's what we got going on here? Is we already know what we're trying to get to? Do we have to spend time doing a study committee to get where we want to get, I guess, or where some people want to get?
Well, so indexing has been on WCCL's #1 list of things we would like to get accomplished for 20 years now. And it goes to the advisory committee and it never comes out as indexed. And what's happening is each year we're falling behind. This year, as soon as this $50 bump comes out, we're still going to be behind. So, I mean, I think in answer to your question, I mean, I do think when you look at the numbers, I almost think that the conclusion should be inescapable. So in that way, I would say you might be right. But on the other hand, if somebody else has other data they want to bring in, that's the purpose of the study committee. They can bring it in.
Okay, that's all the questions for you. Mr. Ralph Perales.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Ralph Perales. I'm the president of the Georgia Injured Worker Advocates, which is a professional association of lawyers that represent injured workers. Obviously, we're here to decide whether we should have a study committee to look at these issues. And I think the question is a good question that Representative Carpenter raised. We all sort of feel like, where we need to go. I'm not going to rehash what Zach Herndon said. I mean, the numbers are what the numbers are. We're at the bottom of the list across the state. Across the United States. Let me add a couple of other points here as you decide whether you need to support, whether we need to look at this issue. We are in an insurance-centric system. That means that having insurance is mandatory in Georgia workers' compensation when you have 3 or more employees. There are very few exceptions out there where companies are self-insured, the ones that can afford that, the big companies maybe. But for the most part, we're talking about an insurance system here. Workers' compensation insurance is tied to the payroll. When payroll goes up, premiums go up. Insurance companies charge more money. And yet what we're seeing, as Zach says, is that we're seeing a deflation on those benefits, on the max benefits. Because today at $675, using the last 4 quarters available, as Zach mentioned, of data that we have, the state average weekly wage would be $1,191. And at $675 today, that means that the cap is at 57.56%, which is 10 points below that goal that we set years ago, 66.6. So obviously, we're always playing this catch up that takes years. And of course, injured workers pay for it because they don't have enough money to make their payments, monthly payments, as everything goes up. Now, so that's another reason. But why should we look at it really is because we should look at whether more than indexing ought to be established, here in Georgia. I've asked around, I've looked around. I don't know where this 2/3 figure comes from. There's no anywhere in any statute, any rule. Somebody probably, maybe before I was born, decided based on whatever was premises they used at the time that 2/3 was a good number. Okay. Now, since then, we've seen a lot of states raise that to 100%, and some even go above 100%. So we ought to look at whether 66.6% and whatever justification was used those years ago still hold true. It may be, we may have to lower it, or we may have to raise it, as most states are doing. So that's what we got to look at also in conjunction with this questions of whether we need to index, but whether we need to also revisit that figure of 66.6. So I encourage you to, support this resolution. All we're doing is asking the questions, bring the data, let's look at it, and let's see where the number takes us. And let's use that to, move forward our workers' compensation system. Thank you so much.
Wait, don't leave. Chairman Kirby.
Thank you, Chairman. All right, so you just gave me heartburn. All right, so I heard what you were saying, but also now I'm starting to get concerned that we're really getting into issues that the advisory council has perfected over the years with the 100+ members, and you're asking a member, a study committee of what, 5 people on the House, 5 people on the Senate, or what's
I think
the
it would
total?
be, I think it's a House only.
It's
isn't
just
it?
House only,
Yeah.
so it's a total of 5. I apologize, I don't have the legislation for me. So you're talking about we're going to give what 100 people do 4 times a year to 5 people to come up with a recommendation, and then it completely breaks the autonomy of what the Workers' Comp Board is been so successful in doing. My question to you is, how does the legal system work in workers' comp? So when a client comes to you, what's that transaction look like?
Well, that's a very broad question. Exactly.
So
what
I got
is
hurt
it?
on the job.
Okay.
Since the rates are set, how
Okay.
do you get paid in that process?
How do I get paid?
Yeah.
Well, under the law, I'm entitled to charge a percentage, which is up to 25% maximum of whatever benefits I recover for the client. Now, I have to show that those benefits were recovered because of my efforts. So in other words, if it's a situation where the client from the get-go, let's say, they just hire me, but the company, the insurance companies, they initiate benefits promptly, I'm not going to collect any benefit out of that. Okay, because the state board has to approve, and I have to support the reason why I'm asking for these benefits. Now, personally, Representative Carpenter, even if I'm entitled to it, I don't take 25% from that weekly. wage. You know why? Benefit? Because it's not enough for my clients to live on. So I always forgo, even though I'm entitled to that 25%, even though I've litigated for a year to get that $675 or $400 or whatever that rate is, I forgo recovering a fee on that because my clients can't afford it. You know, I mean, you just can't pay rent. You can't pay if you have 4 kids or 3 kids or 2 kids, whatever. You still got a lot of mouths to feed. That's a personal choice that I've made. I know many lawyers that do that. Not all do, but I know many that do that.
Okay. And so it would be fair to say that if the max raises to $1,000, then you stand to financially benefit tremendously from that raise.
There may be some cases, of course, that my clients are going to be able to collect a higher rate. I'm not going to deny that. But remember, the state average weekly wage is just that, an average. 50% of the people make more money, 50% make less money. So it's not like every case I'm going to make more money. As Zach mentioned, my client's rate is fixed by what he earns. So even if you raise that state average weekly wage to $2,000 a week, if my client is only making $500, he's going to be stuck at $500. He's not going to get any more.
Sure.
All we're doing is we're allowing those folks that make more money to be able to recover a little more every week. The assumption being that the more money you make, the more you are spending in your daily living, you got more bills, you got more things to pay. You'll be surprised. Right now, I have a client, he's a laborer. All he does is clean gutters, pressure wash, clean roofs. His average weekly wage is $3,800 a week. Right now, he's getting $675. So he's got to support his family, 2 kids, whatever, used to making that kind of money on $675. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean that everybody's going to win. It's just going to mean that we're going to bring in a little more folks that are making way less than they're supposed to, receiving less benefits than they're supposed to.
Okay.
All right, no other questions. Thank you, Mr. Prowlis.
Thank
Anybody else? Okay, Mr. Potter, come on up.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I think it's probably wise to
Who are you?
Bobby Potter on behalf of, well, I had that question earlier in terms of what my client position was on this resolution, and my answer to that person that represents WCCL is my client does not have a position on this issue. The people that pay me to be down here, State Farm and the American Council of Life Insurers, don't worry about workers' compensation. So I speak to you from the standpoint of the advisory council. I was asked this past year to chair the advisory committee, the council, and I've been chair of the legislative committee for a long time, probably more than 15 years, less than 20. So I come to you from that perspective with some concerns. And I would just tell you this without getting too deep in the weeds. You all passed House Bill 1409 a couple of weeks ago that raised the maximum rate, went to the floor. There were 2 people that spoke against it on the floor, both trial lawyers or both lawyers. One was accurate in some comments. One thought it was a federal program. It went to the Senate. It passed out of the Senate Insurance Committee yesterday, as it passed this committee. It was before the Senate Insurance Committee a week ago, Wednesday, the day after crossover day, and it was held, and Zach spoke to that committee and spoke essentially what he had said here today. Robert Bourne spoke to that committee, some about indexing, some about it's just not enough and we're behind. So it was held. So some of that was generated, has generated this meeting in a sense to have a study committee of this item. And my concern that I would express to you is this. This is a great soundbite. It was a great soundbite for Zach and for Robert. I'd say 48 out of 50 states. What's the problem? Put it on cruise control. This would be really easy to do. What I would suggest to you is that we've isolated in this resolution one item, which is indexing of the rate in a workers' compensation system that's vastly more complicated than that. It does not deal with, and I wouldn't want you to deal with these 5 folks, with the calculation of the rate the duration of the rate, the method of suspension of benefits of the rate, the percentage of attorney fees that are awarded from the rate, subrogation, all significant issues in the workers' compensation system, much of which affects what the injured worker receives, some of which affects what the injured worker's attorney received, as that question was posed. So 2 items that I would suggest to you. This is, Representative Kirby has indicated there's a whole lot of information out there, which is totally accurate. This is a 115-page study from WCRI, the Workers' Compensation Research Institute. They just analyze every state and lay it out. So 2 other items that I would suggest to you relative to this, the concerns that I have about this. One is in the suspension mechanism of benefits. Somebody is on benefits and they are suspended. The benefits are suspended, generally for a reason. They may have returned to work. They may be able to return to work. In 40 out of 50 states, a suspension mechanism is maximum medical improvement. That is, the physician has indicated that this patient has reached maximum medical improvement and the temporary total disability benefits are suspended. 40 states out of 50 do that. Georgia does not. In the 3 states that are referenced in this resolution and were referenced by Zach in the Senate committee, and again here today, Alabama, Florida, and South Carolina, each of those states, the mechanism for suspension is MMI. I'm not here proposing that. I have resisted that within the advisory council for some time. I don't think it's a particularly good idea and good for Georgia, but that is part of this whole puzzle of workers' compensation benefits. In the 3 states that Zach referenced, in the 3 states that are in this resolution, the attorney fee mechanism is, in Alabama, is 15%. In Florida, it's 20% for the first $5,000. It's 15% for the next $5,000 and 10% thereafter. When that passed in Florida, what that did was send lawyers from Florida across the line up to Georgia, and lawyers from Alabama have come across the line. There's a reason that there's advertising nonstop all day, every day. That's a concern. So I just present those to you in the sense that there's a lot of pressures within this puzzle that's workers' compensation that the advisory council wrestles with every year and that the chairman wrestles with every year. And this chairman took this conversation from the advisory council in October and started dealing with all the players in this system to reach the bill that turned out to be 1409. That was a $50 increase. I could almost assure a $50 increase for next year unless you all go in a different direction. And certainly you have that right to study this and study all portions of this. But I'm just suggesting to you with these items, and I just referenced 2, there'll be other folks, because I've seen it through the years, that will come forward and they want to reference their item. In the business community, they would like to have what Florida has. And we resisted that probably 10 years ago when there was a big buzz and a big pressure point at that stage. And that was reduced at that time by the advisory council dealing with it. And you all did not have to deal with it. But if you pick and choose this way, the concern will be it's going to continue next year and the year after that, different interest group, different item on this list, different item out of this. And it would be a real concern that I have. So I would share that with you. And the last item I would reference within the advisory council, and Representative Carper had asked Mr. Hendon if he's a member, but there is a member that's a member of the, I don't know if you're in WCCL or not, I think you are, that is part of WCCL and on the advisory council and within the legislative committee. And Chairman Benson added 2 more folks that were in WCCL on the legislative committee this past year. Didn't take anybody off, added 2 more. The concern I would have about this and express that to you is when this discussion happens within the advisory council, you put an enormous amount of pressure on the folks within that committee that represent WCCL because others are relying on them. But it's hard to rely on them if they say, well, WCCL is just going to go around the advisory council and come to you all with a single issue and present that to you. That makes it very difficult to work on the whole puzzle within the advisory council. So those are the concerns I expressed to you.
Okay, don't go anywhere. Representative Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Potter, I greatly appreciate your wisdom and experience, especially when it comes to such a complex matter like workers' comp. But a few questions, if I may.
Yes, sir.
So one, I mean, I don't necessarily see simply studying indexing as necessarily opening up the Pandora's box such that all various entities that comprise the advisory committee can come directly to the legislature. But specifically, I am curious why Georgia is only one of 2 states that does not index.
I don't know what the other 48 states did and when they decided to make that change when they did it. I don't know the answer to that. I would say in looking at what I have looked at, the various states are all over the board in calculation of those benefits. What we're talking about is the maximum of that. And most have stayed in that range of 2/3. The question really was posed earlier, why in the world was it 2/3? And maybe that was before the speaker was born. Generally, I think that range is because benefits are tax-free. So if it's $37,500 of benefits, that's really kind of a $50,000 wage because they're tax-free.
So as an example, I was unaware that Georgia was only one of 2 states that did not index, but I think the conversation really came to my attention after the advisory committee, based on my understanding, recommended $100, but only $50 for this legislative session was moved forward as a compromise. But I think in understanding and now knowing that, Georgia is one of the lowest when it comes to providing workers' comp and being in the minority, very small minority when it comes to indexing. One, I don't necessarily see the harm in at a minimum studying the issue for the benefit of committee members. But two, surely when it comes to injured workers themselves, to make sure that this committee is able to ensure that there's a balance, but also that, of course, injured workers are able to receive the benefits that they're otherwise entitled to. I think is an important issue for all the committees here who would be very interested in further obtaining additional information.
So I understand that, and I wouldn't disabuse you of the notion of obtaining as much information as you would like. I'm just suggesting to you, this is one component of many in the workers' compensation system. And if you go down this path, and you can, and that's what it would appear would be happening today, and that's fine, there'll be additional paths that other entities are going to ask you to look at and scrutinize. You may relieve pressure on some part of this system, and you may increase pressure on another part of this system with small business and other businesses.
One last question, if I may. As chair of the advisory or the policy committee for the advisory committee, has the issue of indexing been studied by the advisory committee over the past 20 years? And if so, what happened?
It has been referenced and discussed. I don't know that there's the deep dive study, as I indicated to you. I don't know why the other 48 states have done what they've done. Then again, I don't know why the other 40 out of 50 states have decided that you can suspend benefits with a medical report. I just know that in relative to the discussions in Georgia, I didn't think that was a very good idea, while businesses, for the large part, would say that'd be great for us because we can suspend benefits and control our costs more. So I don't know the answer to that. It has been discussed a fair amount.
Thank you, Mr. Potter.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that exhausts all questions.
Thank you.
And I think, okay, Mr. Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to kind of maybe clarify a few things. Representative Carpenter, I don't think the conclusion's foregone at all. I mean, I have no idea where this will go. Having had the opportunity to work comp claims in probably close to 16 different states, there are a lot of states that would love to have what we've got here. I mean, they do a good job. I didn't put the report to the advisory council in here because in the statute, the only thing it says about the chairman's advisory council is they don't get paid. They are not set by statute who's in it, how they're function or anything else about it. It is the chairman's council and they don't get paid. So, but my intent, and I ask you to go with me on this, is our report would go to the advisory council. We may just say, hey, we've looked at these other states and how they're doing things and it doesn't work for us. So let's keep on rolling. Or it may say something different. Or it may say something that nobody's doing. I don't know. I don't have the answers. The report he had. I mean, what we heard today is a lot of the things that we would start getting into in this committee, and it didn't take long. You see, there's a lot going on. There really is. So then, as the only other thing as a sidebar, I might want to talk to Mr. Potter. People in this room excluded, but if he's got a plan on how we get lawyers to leave the state, that might be a good thing. So,
Okay.
But this is, the report is destined to go to them, and it's just not in here because they're not listed in statute on who they are and what they do and anything like that. So hopefully that clears up what you were talking about, Kate.
No, actually it didn't. It caused a question. Chairman Carpenter. I'm sorry, Representative Holly.
Thank you. Thank you, dear friend, for bringing this to. I was just kind of curious. If this resolution passes committee, is it likely that after this session, there will be a consultant from the 114th district on it who just so happens to have a knowledge about this bill that is contracted to join with the study committee to find out some information about this?
A consultant from my district?
Yeah.
He's talking about your replacement.
No.
No,
No,
just-
it's,
Tongue in cheek question.
yeah, I'm just messing.
yeah,
with you, man.
I don't,
Yeah, you're good. All right.
Okay. That looks like it exhausts our questions. And again, I think just in a 15, 20-minute discussion, it shows you how complicated this is. So what's the will, the pleasure of the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to pass.
That time would be now. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? And this is House Resolution 1024 LC 365272. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay.
My eye was for the bill. I just couldn't get
Okay.
on mute.
I know there's always delay. That's why I was hesitating. Okay.
Let's scratch that back.
Okay. So the motion carries. You're on the rules combined. I don't ever bring one. You can come to my office and get one. So Senator Burke is not able to be here, but the more than adequate House member who's carrying the bill, Representative Chairman Gamble, and Brad Alexander is going to come with him and tell us about Senate Bill 605.
All right. Well, good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 605. I'm not Senator Burke. He is presiding over the committee hearing on House Bill 1013 right now. So he's got a couple things on his plate to handle. But basically, in a nutshell, this would help Metro Atlanta YMCA. And in this particular bill, currently a nonprofit or nonprofit could elect to reimburse the unemployment insurance fund for claims rather than paying insurance premiums. Up until COVID-19, this is a great way for them to lower their unemployment insurance costs by reimbursing to a limit and then carrying an insurance policy for additional cost. In the case of Metro Atlanta YMCA, the insurance carrier issued a blanket denial of all COVID-19 claims. This meant that a massive number of claims collided with a denial of the insurance coverage that was supposed to cover those claims. And so in a nutshell, this would allow them, rather than having to pay it in 1 year, this would allow them to do that in 3 years. It's very narrowly written to apply, for anybody that had more than $360,000. It sunsets on December the 31st, 2026. And I'm happy to go into some of the reasons why Metro YMCA would be worthy for something like this to be done for them. If you would like for me to, I know that many of you know the great work that they do already. But that, in essence, Mr. Chairman, is what the bill seeks to do.
Okay, Vice Chair Kirby?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick question. Will you be doing the Village People YMCA on the floor of the House?
Well, if that's what it takes to pass the bill, no, I'm just kidding. No, you don't want to see me dance. I promise you that. So, or sing.
Representative Park?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Gamble, so I just had two questions. One on line 17, the $360,000 amount. Is that arbitrary, or is that to just make this as narrow as possible so that it affects one entity?
Correct. That's the narrowness that we were trying to apply so that it wouldn't be, wide open. And so that was the thought there.
One more question, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Mhm.
So would you be able to speak to the effect of this bill when it comes to will this, for example, allow Metro YMCA to provide unemployment benefits to its employees that previously denied, or, what effect or impact does this have?
Sure. Yeah. And Brad Alexander, he's on the board, and I know he can speak specifically to that.
Yeah, I'm a volunteer board member for the organization. And the main thing it does is allow us to, by paying it over 3 years, we don't have to fire people and cancel programs. If you look at what happened during COVID, the Ys get a large portion of their revenues from people who pay to use the facility, and they use that money to provide services for people who can't pay. So that dropped way off. And then at the same time, the organization sponsored a massive pod-based learning program when school systems were closed so that kids could be in a safe place, particularly when one or both parents had to go to work for an essential job. So expenses went up, revenues went down. And by spreading the cost over 3 years, we can absorb it into the operating budget without having to fire anybody or cancel any programs that don't generate revenue. And
Thank
that's the core.
And this is a loaded question. I already know the answer, but legislation was not your first avenue. This was after exhausting every other means to try to resolve this, correct?
It's part of why we're in front of you so late in the session, and why the good senator from Bainbridge, who obviously is not in Metro Atlanta, agreed to sponsor it. We worked kind of until the last minute to try to find an administrative remedy, and just for a variety of reasons, we're not able to get that done. And this is kind of the last option in the quiver to deal with the issue.
Okay, Representative Holly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming down here, Brad, and thanks to my colleague, good bill. I'm just a little curious. I know pandemic, rough, insurance companies probably, hard for them to foresee it. But because the Metro Atlanta YMCA has been around a long time, member back when I was in middle school, was Metro Atlanta YMCA given any real reason for why these claims were denied? For any reason for as to why, because you've maintained such a long relationship, why they would not allow?
Yeah, I mean, you
sense.
raise a good point, and it was my first question when this was presented to us, was whether we had a cause of action on a coverage dispute. And counsel said that it was questionable because nobody wrote insurance policies anticipating COVID. So the outcome was unclear, the cost would have been high. And the real kicker is that if you are a service organization that serves kids right now, it is very hard to get insurance policies.
Wow.
And the concern was that if we led the way on a big coverage dispute, that we'd have other operational impacts on property and casualty and the other insurance we have to carry to serve kids and staff programs.
Okay, and as far as you know, there's been no opposition whatsoever to this, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, I don't see any more questions. What's the will of the committee? We have a do pass, Chairman Carpenter. Second, multiple seconds down here. Any discussion? This is Senate Bill 605 LC by Senate Committee Substitute LC 365252S. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Waiting for the computer delay. All those opposed, like sign.
Yeah, I actually had my hand raised, but
Sorry.
that's okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
the delay thing. No, I just wanted clarity. Now, where is the fund, the money's coming from? If you could help me with it. Is it coming out the state's budget?
No, it'll come from the WISE operating budget. We elected the self-insured, so we owe the
Okay.
liability. We just are looking for a little extra time to pay it.
Yeah, there is no state, cost to the
Thank
state from the other.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay, so, yeah, mine's a yes.
Okay, so we've passed. Hey, before everybody runs out, want to recognize a couple of people. Hadn't had this in a while. We've got two members that are leaving. Dwayne Hill. Who, both these guys have given their speech from the floor. I just want to say personally, thank you, from the chair. Two different modes of operation, but very valuable. You know, Dwayne's a quiet guy, but that didn't mean he's not paying attention. He's always come to me asking questions. Very thoughtful. Just need to get him, and see Casey's gone. I just need to get him away from Casey sometimes on some of these votes. I'm gonna have to do seating arrangements next year. But appreciate everything you've done for us, Dwayne. He's got his lovely wife with him. Thank you for all your support, because as we all know, it's a family affair. Also, retiring as our vice chair, and this one's going to hurt me because most folks in the last year or so, it's not just a cop out, but it's the smartest thing I could do. When people come to me with a bill regarding workers' comp, Kirby, as he said, I think he's got knowledge of 14, 16 states. He's the HR director of a Fortune 50 company. And if you've been on this committee long enough, you know that he'll quote code, chapter, and verse off the top of his head. So a lot of times when people come to me with an idea, I tell them, you convince Kirby of it and then come back. And so I've sent many people his way. Yeah. So now I got to find somebody to sift these tough issues for me. But thank you to both of y'all. You're going to be greatly missed. And thank you for your service. And with that, we're adjourned.